Ever hail a ride share and think, man, I wish this thing could just drive itself?
Happens to me all the time.
Well, that's basically the whole robotaxi idea in a nutshell. And that's what we're diving into today.
Love it.
We're using the latest from Wikipedia on robotaxis. So we're going to figure out how close is this tech to actually being, something we use every day?
Right.
What are the good things, the bad things, and who are the big players making it happen? Where do we even start?
Well, I think jumping off that close to everyday use idea is interesting. I mean, you remember a few years back, everyone was saying robotaxis would be everywhere by like 2018.
Oh, yeah, totally. What happened there?
Yeah, about that.
Was it just like hype? Or is this stuff way harder than anyone thought it would be?
I think it's a little both, honestly. Building a car that can drive itself in literally any condition, that's crazy complicated. We're talking about teaching a machine how to see the world, how to react to everything, really. Unpredictable stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask of a machine. But haven't there been some trials that worked out? What's actually happening out there right now?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Trials are popping up all over. Companies like Waymo are even letting people ride in driverless cars in some cities.
Really?
Yeah, but it's not as easy as just letting a bunch of robots loose on the roads and calling it a day.
Right. So what's the holdup? Is it all about getting that self-driving system perfect, or are there other things to think about?
That's the big question. Yeah, the tech itself still needs some work, but even if we magically figured it all out tomorrow,
Oh,
there are still huge hurdles like, will people even get in these things? And what about all the rules and regulations? It gets messy.
so it's bigger than just the tech. We're talking about getting people to trust a car with no driver, which, after that Uber crash a while back, I get it.
Exactly. That, and you've got stuff like those cruise vehicles messing with emergency responders. It's serious stuff that needs to be addressed.
For sure. Building trust takes time.
Transparency, too.
And a super strong track record.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you've got the whole regulatory nightmare. Every country, heck, every city has different rules about these things driving around.
It's like a free-for-all out there.
Kinda, yeah. This makes it a pain for companies to expand because what works in one place might get shut down in another.
Makes sense. We've talked a lot about the challenges, but before we get into the global situation, let's shift gears a bit. What are the good things about robotaxis that have everyone so excited?
Well, for one, it's not just about convenience, though that's a big one.
Sure.
People are saying these things could change how safe our roads are, how much traffic we deal with, and even the environment.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
For example, Waymo, they're one of the leaders in this whole thing. They did a study, right? Their robotaxis had 85% fewer injury crashes per mile than with human drivers.
85? Are you serious? That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a human error thing,
Right. Get rid of us. Less accidents.
basically. No more texting while driving, no drunk driving, even just being tired. All those things factor into accidents.
Big time. Okay, what about traffic jams and trying to find parking? Can robotaxis actually fix those?
Imagine if cities were designed for cars that were constantly moving instead of needing to park all the time. Robotaxis could drop people off and pick them up without having to hang around.
So we could actually get rid of parking lots.
That's the idea.
Think about all that space we could put in parks, more housing, all kinds of stuff.
The possibilities are pretty amazing.
They really are. But what about the cost of all this? Aren't these things crazy expensive to make?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Cost is a major factor. Early on, they were saying a fully loaded Waymo vehicle was hitting like $180,000.
Wow.
But companies are working hard to get those prices down, way lower.
So who's leading the charge on that? Getting those prices down, I mean.
Baidu, they're a huge tech company over in China. They're aiming to build theirs for something like, get this, $77,665.
Okay, that's a pretty big difference.
Right. And Tesla, because of course it's Tesla, they're saying under $25,000.
Whoa, under $25,000. That's
Yeah.
ambitious.
Totally. Whether they can actually pull it off on a large scale anyway, that's still up in the air.
Yeah.
But everyone's trying to make these things actually affordable.
Makes sense, especially if the goal is for everyone to use them, not just the super rich.
Exactly. And that's where things get interesting when you compare how the U.S. and China are tackling this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. How so?
So in the U.S., you've got companies like Waymo and Cruise. They're mostly focused on big cities, with all the craziness that comes with that. And they're taking it slow, being super careful about expanding too fast.
And China? What are they doing?
They're like, hold my drink, full speed ahead. Baidu, for example, they've already had millions of rides through the Robotaxi service. It's called Apollo Go.
Millions already.
Yeah, they're operating in Beijing, Shanghai, all the big ones. And here's the kicker. The government is fully behind them.
Wow, so no red tape for them.
Not so much.
So why are they going so much faster? What's the big difference?
I think it's a few things. China's cities are massive, and everyone's packed in there. They need better transportation, like yesterday. Plus, the government sees this tech as their ticket to being a global leader. They're putting your money where their mouth is.
So it's a combination of like, they need it and they want it.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the actual tech? Are they doing something totally different from the US companies?
At the core, they're all trying to solve the same problems. How to make a car drive itself, basically. But there are some differences in how they're going about it, and it seems like some of those differences are giving the Chinese companies an edge when it comes to actually getting these things on the road.
Like what? Spill the tea.
LiDAR. It's this tech that uses lasers to map everything around the car. Some U.S. companies are moving away from it, but Chinese companies like Baidu, they're all in. And their systems seem to be working really well with it.
Interesting. So different approaches, even when the goal is the same. But with all this talk about China, it makes you wonder, are they going to win the robotaxi race?
It's not really a race with just one winner, you know. But the fact that they're moving so fast and being so aggressive, it definitely makes you think.
It does.
What they're doing could change the whole game for everyone. It could change regulations, where the money goes, even what people expect from this technology.
So what happens in China with robotaxis won't stay in China?
Probably not. It shows how quickly things can go global.
Wild.
Right.
Okay, so we've got these two very different approaches, US versus China. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
If someone's listening to this and thinking, all right, when can I actually hail one of these things myself? What do you tell them?
$1 million question. Right. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It's going to be different everywhere.
Right, I get that. But it's probably safe to say that if you live in a place where they're already testing them, like San Francisco or Phoenix, you've got a better shot than, say, someone out in the countryside.
100%.
Yeah.
It's going to start in the big cities, and even then, it's not going to happen overnight. We're talking years before these are just a normal thing you can hail on the street.
It's like those old sci-fi movies that promised us flying cars by the year 2000.
Right.
We're still waiting on those. Robotaxis are a pretty good consolation prize, though.
For sure. We may not be zipping around in the air just yet, but robotaxis could change our cities, our environment, maybe even the whole economy. It's pretty crazy to think about.
All right, let's go there then. We've talked about the good stuff, like fewer accidents, less traffic, all that. But what about the bigger picture? How could this tech change society?
Well, one of the biggest issues is what happens to all the drivers.
Oh, right. The jobs.
Yeah. If all of a sudden we have all these robotaxis, what happens to taxi drivers, truck drivers, delivery drivers, all of them?
That's a big one. It's one thing to talk about how cool driverless cars are, but it's another to think about all the people who might be out of a job because of them.
Yeah, it's not like those jobs are just going to disappear overnight, but it's something to think about for sure.
It is. It's a big deal. So, are there any ideas out there for how to deal with this? Like, if people do start losing jobs because of robotaxis, what do we do?
Right, that's the question, isn't it? What are people saying?
Well, some experts think the government needs to step in and help people learn new skills, retraining programs.
So they're not driving taxis anymore, but they're working on the tech that makes the taxis go.
Something like that, yeah. Or maybe they could be trained to do maintenance and repairs on those vehicles. Or even urban planning, designing cities that are built for these driverless cars.
Okay, so we've got retraining. What else is being talked about?
There's this idea of a universal basic income. It's basically like everyone gets a paycheck, whether they have a job or not.
Huh. Interesting. So what are the arguments for and against these things? Retraining, people who like the retraining idea say it's the only way to make sure workers don't get left behind as technology keeps changing.
Which it always does.
Exactly. But then others say these retraining programs haven't always worked that great in the past. Like, what's to say these workers will actually find new jobs, even with the training?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And what about the universal basic income idea?
People who support that say it would solve a lot of problems. It would help people who lose their jobs to automation, but it could also help with poverty and inequality in general.
Makes sense. But I'm guessing there are some downsides, too.
For sure. It's super expensive to implement something like that for everyone. And then there's the argument that it would make people lazy. Like, why would anyone work if they're already getting paid?
Tough questions. It feels like there are good arguments on both sides.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out as robotaxi technology gets better and we start to see the real impact it has on jobs.
Yeah, for sure. It's like a real-life experiment happening right in front of us.
Ex-
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the tech itself to the global race to get these things on the road to the potential impact on society as a whole.
We did.
And I think it's safe to say that robotaxis are about more than just catching a ride.
Way more.
It's about rethinking how we live in cities, how we work, how we even think about transportation as a whole.
Just a whole new world.
It really is. And on that note, we'll wrap things up for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the world of robotaxis. We'll see you next time.